This is TGS True Crime, and I'm Nox Harlow. Tonight we're uncovering a story that gripped headlines and left questions still unanswered. A case that reveals just how far people will go, and what happens when justice takes a different form. Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps us keep bringing you in-depth true crime stories from across Britain and Ireland. Now let's begin. Today we're talking about Lindsay Sandiford, the British grandmother who just spent 12 years on death row in Indonesia and is finally coming home. After over a decade of waiting to be executed by firing squad, she's being repatriated back to the UK. And the story of how she ended up there. Man, it's wild.
Lindsay Sandiford was arrested at Bali's International Airport in 2012 after nearly 5 kilograms of cocaine were discovered in her luggage lining.
Lindsay Sandiford, born June 25, 1956, is originally from Redcar in northeast England. Back in 2012, she was caught at Bali's Ngurah Rai International Airport with nearly 5 kilograms of cocaine hidden in the false bottom of her suitcase. The value? Around £1.6 million, or roughly $2.14 million depending on who you ask. Now here's where it gets interesting. Lindsay claims she was forced into it. She said a UK-based drug syndicate threatened to kill her son unless she carried out the job. And here's the thing, when she got arrested, she cooperated with police. She helped them set up a sting operation that led to the arrests of Julian Ponder, his partner Rachel Dougall, and Paul Beales, the people allegedly running this whole operation. But despite her cooperation, despite the prosecution only asking for 15 years, the judges sentenced her to death. They said she damaged Bali's image as a tourist destination and showed no remorse. Meanwhile, her co-defendants, Rachel got 1 year, Paul got 4, and Julian got 6. Yeah, you heard that right. The grandmother got death, and the alleged ringleaders walked out after a few years. So let me take you back to how this all started. Lindsay worked for many years in management at a Cheltenham-based law firm called TGS Legal. She even appeared in the House of Lords before the Clerk of the Parliaments, which for my American viewers, the House of Lords is basically the equivalent to the Senate. She owned a flat in the 1990s which overlooked the Thames, and she lived there with her ex-husband and their 2 sons, Lewis and Elliot. They were together for around 15 years before getting divorced in 1997, although it wasn't on bad grounds. After the divorce, she moved to Cheltenham with the boys where they rented a house. Years later, when the boys both finished school, Lindsay said she took a trip to India. It was only supposed to be a short holiday, but she fell in love with the country and decided to stay. Although according to reports from the media, she was described as a neighbour from hell before she left. One neighbour said she was evicted for failing to pay rent and caused a lot of trouble where she lived. They said the house was always disorganised with rubbish all over the front garden. There were never any curtains in the windows, and one time there was even a great big hole in the front window. Another neighbour said there were always people coming around and they saw police parked outside a few times. Whether the neighbours were telling the truth or Lindsay just wanted a fresh start in India, either way, she ended up moving there. She started making money by making shawls and jewellery, and she'd sell them on frequent trips back to England or via French shops located in India. At some point in early 2012, her youngest son Elliot was said to have relocated to Brighton. Here, Lindsay alleges that he got caught up with the wrong crowd and was supposedly targeted by an antiques restorer named Julian Ponder, who was originally from Brighton but had relocated to Bali. Lindsay claims that Julian Ponder was involved in an international drug syndicate and had threatened to harm Elliot unless she carried out a job for him. It was believed that Elliot became a target because there was a disagreement over rent money that Lindsay had paid on his behalf, which, looking at her previous history of allegedly getting evicted for not paying rent, wouldn't be too hard to believe. On the 17th of May 2012, Lindsay allegedly travelled to Thailand to a hotel in Bangkok where she met Julian Ponder's partner, Rachel Dougall, and a man known as Paul Beales. At the meeting, she agreed to take the job, which would be to courier nearly 5 kilograms of cocaine from Thailand to Bali. After the job was complete, she claimed her family wouldn't be targeted by this drug syndicate anymore. Rachel Dougall allegedly owned the cocaine that needed to be smuggled, whilst Paul Beales was said to have sewn it into the suitcase. It's believed that she was to deliver the cocaine to Julian Ponder upon arrival in Bali. What happens after the meeting is unclear, but if you could take a wild guess, Lindsay was more than likely having a day to really let this sink in, that she was about to do this. Because, as you guys know, the maximum penalty for smuggling drugs into Indonesia is death. The big day would be 2 days after the meeting, on the 19th of May 2012. Lindsay took a Thai Airways flight from Bangkok to Bali's Ngurah Rai International Airport. Although she successfully got through Thai security with the suitcase full of cocaine, the same couldn't be said for when she landed in Bali. When Lindsay landed, she collected her bag from the carousel and was just a few feet away from the arrivals hall. All was looking clear. She placed the bag through an X-ray machine, and it was here that a customs officer told her to come over and asked her to collect the bag from the machine. She followed orders, and they asked her if she had a key, to which she replied yes. The customs officer then went through the bag. He went straight to the false bottom. Here, the cocaine stash had been found. Lindsay said he knew exactly what he was looking for. When Lindsay was arrested, she allegedly told police she got involved in drug smuggling because her grown-up sons had been threatened back in the UK. After being taken into custody, she was placed in the airport holding cells for 2 nights of interrogation before agreeing to cooperate with law enforcement to bring down this alleged drug syndicate. The operation led to the arrests of Julian Ponder, his partner Rachel Dougall, and Paul Beales. The pair had been living in Bali since 2008, renting a £4,000 a month villa, living what locals described as a king and queen lifestyle. Villagers said they rarely went out and no one knew how they could afford it, which led many to assume they were involved in something illegal. On May 25th, during a controlled handover at a villa, police moved in and arrested everyone involved. 20 officers took part in the arrests. Julian's lawyer later argued that Lindsay said she was dropping off a present for his daughter's birthday and that she had set him up. Eventually, Lindsay, Julian, Rachel, and Paul were all charged. Lindsay, Julian, and Paul were charged with selling or facilitating the sale of more than 5 grams of drugs. During trial, Lindsay's defense argued that she had been coerced into smuggling the drugs due to threats against her son. She apologized in court, saying she only did it to protect her children. Despite this, the court found her guilty. The prosecution requested a 15-year sentence, citing her cooperation and age. But when the verdict came in 2013, the judges sentenced her to death. Her co-defendants received far lighter sentences. Rachel got 1 year, Paul got 4, and Julian got 6 years. The decision shocked people across the UK. Lindsay appealed the verdict, but both her appeal and her Supreme Court review were rejected. And that's when her 12-year wait on death row began. Fast forward to 2013 through 2025, and Lindsay has been living in Kerobokan prison, or as some inmates call it, Hotel K. And trust me, there's nothing hotel-like about this place. The prison was built in 1979 for around 300 people. Today, it houses 1,300 inmates. Former prisoners have described it as a hellhole with frequent murders, rapes, drug overdoses, and bashings. Not exactly where you want to spend over a decade of your life. Lindsay shared a 5-meter by 5-meter cell with 4 other women, most of them poorly educated local women also convicted of drug offences. She spent her days teaching knitting classes, making clothes and toys for her grandchildren, charities, and church groups. She developed arthritis over the years, and according to friends, she slumped into depression. By all accounts, she became somewhat of a queen in the jail. One Indonesian woman imprisoned for corruption said Lindsay was seen as the jail's queen, and there were reports she got special treatment like being able to order medium rare steak once a week. Whether that's true or just prison gossip, who knows? But here's what we do know. Lindsay was genuinely preparing to die. In 2015, she wrote an article for the Mail on Sunday where she said, "My execution is imminent and I know I might die at any time now. I could be taken tomorrow from my cell." She even started writing goodbye letters to her family and said she planned to sing Perry Como's Magic Moments when facing the firing squad. I mean, imagine that, preparing yourself mentally for 12 years to be taken to Execution Island and shot. And speaking of Execution Island, that's where she was supposed to go, Nusa Kambangan, this sprawling prison complex off the coast of central Java. It's home to several prisons of varying security levels. The least volatile inmates can expect to spend their days working in the fields and carving gems. But for those targeted by Indonesia's strict drug laws, you're kept in isolation, just waiting for the day they line you up in front of the firing squad. Indonesia has some of the world's toughest drug laws, by the way. Former President Joko Widodo literally ordered police to shoot suspected drug dealers on sight. The whole approach has been compared to former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's death squads. Basically zero tolerance, shoot first, ask questions later. As of early November last year, more than 90 foreigners were on death row in Indonesia, all on drug charges. The Indonesian government even recently signaled they could resume executions. The last ones were carried out in 2016 when they killed 1 Indonesian citizen and 3 Nigerian drug convicts by firing squad. So yeah, Lindsay had every reason to believe she was never getting out of there alive. In 2019, she gave this brutally honest interview to the Daily Mail where she explained why she decided not to lodge a final appeal. She said, "I really cannot face asking anyone for help or having to deal with another lawyer. I just can't face it. I've been burnt enough times. I've had 10 different lawyers. If I actually turned my mind to the legal process, I would get angry and bitter, and it would be destructive. Well-wishers had raised over £40,000 for an appeal, and all of it got spent by a succession of Indonesian lawyers and legal assistants with nothing to show for it. So you can understand why she just gave up on the legal system at that point. But despite everything, Lindsay tried to stay positive. She was visited by her 2 young granddaughters, both born in the UK after her arrest. And she said the thought of them gave her comfort. She had pictures of them around her bed in her cell and would wake up every day, see their faces, and smile. She told the Daily Mail, "In spite of everything, I feel blessed. I have been blessed to live long enough to see my 2 sons grow up into fine young men and blessed to have been able to meet my 2 grandchildren." A lot of people don't get that in their lifetime. When asked if she feared execution by firing squad, she said, "It won't be a hard thing for me to face anymore. It's not particularly a death I would choose, but then again I wouldn't choose dying in agony from cancer either. I do feel I can cope with it. But when it happens, I don't want my family to come. I don't want any fuss at all. The one thing certain about life is no one gets out alive." That's heavy, man. Really heavy. Rachel Dougall, who served 1 year for failing to report a crime, told Daily Mail Australia in 2017 that she suffered a nervous breakdown in Kerobokan prison. She said, "Most of the women were on drugs virtually every day. If you had money, the guards would get you anything you wanted. Inmates in the men's prison next door even paid prostitutes for overnight visits." She said she was beaten several times before being released in May 2013. Inside the prison, announcements and sirens on loudspeakers were blasted every day, and inmates were constantly vying for space in the crowded cells. It's the kind of place that breaks people down mentally and physically. Earlier this year, Lindsay became hopeful she might actually be released due to a change in the country's law. She even started giving away her clothes to fellow inmates in anticipation of her freedom. But months passed, and nothing happened. Her friends said she slumped back into depression, just waiting and waiting. Then finally, in 2025, after 12 years, the Indonesian government signed an agreement to repatriate her back to the UK. A government source confirmed it, saying, "The practical arrangement will be signed today. The transfer will be done immediately after the technical side of the transfer is agreed." Lindsay, along with another British citizen named Shahab Shahabadi, who was arrested in 2014 on drug charges, will be transferred back to the UK. The British Embassy in Jakarta directed all queries to the Indonesian government, and Indonesian authorities scheduled a press conference for the release of 2 British nationals, with the British ambassador to Indonesia. Now, this is part of a larger move by Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto's administration to repatriate several high-profile inmates back to their home countries. In December last year, a Filipina inmate named Mary Jane Veloso tearfully reunited with her family after nearly 15 years on death row. In February, French national Serge Atlaoui was returned home after 18 years on death row in Indonesia. So Indonesia's been making moves to get these foreign prisoners off their death row and back to their home countries. And here's a little side note about the people Lindsay helped arrest. Remember Julian Ponder, the alleged ringleader from Brighton? He was freed from Kerobokan prison in late 2017, and there were rumours that more than £1 million in bribes were paid to drop trafficking charges against him, his former partner, Rachel Dougall, and Paul Beales. Julian was cleared of smuggling but convicted of possessing 23 grams of cocaine and sentenced to 6 years in 2013. Last year, Julian told the Daily Mail that Lindsay set him up, but even he thinks she should be freed from death row. He said, "For Lindsay to wait for that knock on the door every day is beyond cruel. She's been punished enough." So even the guy who allegedly got her involved in this mess thinks 12 years is too much. In my opinion, this whole case has been a mess from day one. Lindsay Sandiford, a grandmother with no previous convictions who cooperated with police, got death. The alleged ringleader got 6 years and was out in less time than that, possibly through bribes. Human rights lawyers and even former UK Director of Public Prosecutions Ken MacDonald said she was treated with quite extraordinary severity. Supreme Court judges in London said substantial mitigating factors had been overlooked in her original trial. After 12 years of living in a cramped cell, teaching knitting classes, preparing goodbye letters, and waking up every day not knowing if it's her last, Lindsay Sandiford is finally coming home. Whether you believe she was coerced or made a terrible decision on her own, I think we can all agree that 12 years on death row is punishment enough for anyone. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and if you want more content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Nox, and I'll see you in the next one.